Howard was waiting for the bus to work one morning when a man came down the sidewalk and asked him for a cigarette. He didn't say no, just shook his head and moved away slightly. He wasn't smoking one himself, so didn't feel obligated. The man called Howard Buddy when he asked for the cigarette. His arm was in a sling and he wore loose-fitting blue coveralls and paper booties on his feet instead of shoes. After Howard turned him down, he asked an old woman sitting down inside the shelter, but she wouldn't give him one either. They waited for the bus. It was early morning, springtime, and already very warm, the ghost of last night's moon still visible in the blue early sky. Howard, bound for a new job selling textbooks near the campus, hadn't been up this early in a long time. He wanted a smoke, but it would be rude to take the pack out now, so he just stood there. His friend Billy Possibility had connected him with a job in the campus bookstore, and today was his first day. The bus slid in with a whine and a hiss of pressure from its brakes. Howard boarded, paid his fare, and took a seat on the right side near the front door. He sat there as the other passengers boarded and went to their seats. There was an orange light inside the bus from the sunlight glancing off all the felt seat covers. As the driver got ready to pull away from the stop, two men ran up and knocked on the door. "Some crazy motherfucker trying to stick his head up under your bus," said the one in front. There was something wrong with his eyes. "What? Where is he?" asked the driver. "He's back there along your backside," said the other guy. They pointed. The bus driver, a young woman not much older than Howard with a broad, round back and acne scars, clambered down from her seat and stepped halfway off the bus, leaning out the door. "You get on away from this bus," she shrilled. "Scat!" Howard craned around in his seat and looked out the window to see the man who just asked him for a cigarette walking away slowly with his head hung down, dejected. The driver got back in, repositioned herself, and started slowly turning away from the curb into traffic. The bus had barely begun to move. There wasn't even a jolt. You knew something had happened because of the sound, which must have been the man's death cry, but the sound itself wasn't a bad one, just strange. To Howard it sounded like a macaw, only a really big one. Anyway, it was nothing like a scream. It came twice. Several passengers in the rear of the bus and closer to the action began choking and gasping, covering their mouths. "Oh my God, he's decapitated himself under the bus," said a voice. "Call the police!" screamed the driver, then hunched sobbing over the wheel in her broad brown sweater. Everyone started to get off the bus. "It's not your fault," said a woman in front of Howard on her way out and reached over and patted the driver's shoulder. She hunkered down and sobbed even harder, as if that possibility had only just occurred to her. Howard got off the bus and began to walk toward the next stop, turning around just long enough to see the headless body with its blue coveralls stained purple on the sidewalk. One of the two men who'd knocked on the door of the bus, the one in front who'd warned the driver in the first place, was a few feet ahead of him, laughing and she-hooting about the crazy motherfucker. Howard walked around, and in front of him, the sun and wind hurting his eyes and making him squint. His mouth was open. He heard somebody's vomit hit the sidewalk behind him with a wet slap. A man in a red jacket ran past him into a gas station with his hand on his mouth. A cop car rolled up. One got out and said, "Okay, everybody, move along. There's nothing to watch here anymore." As if he knew what there was and wasn't to watch for in this world. Howard didn't turn around. When he got to the next bus stop outside a car dealership 1 block further down Colfax, a beautiful woman in a blue dress carrying a briefcase smiled at him. She had no idea what had happened up the street. In the same moment, Howard heard a young girl's voice say brightly over the parking lot intercom, "Jerry, line 4! Jerry, line 4! The man with the crazy eyes who'd been laughing came up a few seconds later and told this beautiful woman the story of what had just happened, saying over and over again how terrible it was and what a tragedy. "You were walking away from it laughing, man," Howard interrupted him in a pained, small voice. "I heard you." "What?" The man stepped back a little, surprised. His eyes were a blur of pink, the lids a little too low. "That was a shock type thing, man. I was in shock. That was a shock type thing you heard." "I heard you laughing," said Howard again and bowed his head. You could hear a lot of sirens up the street. The grass looked very green down there. Everything looked very real. Maybe I am in shock, he thought. You better get your dish straight, the man puffed out his chest. You heard me praising the Lord, he qualified with scorn for heathens. Good, Howard said weakly. He didn't know what else to say. He didn't want to fight with this man or answer his Lord with his theories. In fact, he felt a strong impulse to get up and wander away in the wrong direction forever, just keep on walking until he could finish feeling it. Instead, he sat down a few feet away from the bus bench on the base of a lamppost and smoked a cigarette, the one he hadn't smoked a few minutes before since it would have been rude. One of life's little moments.